Entry level must have shipped one AAA title.
It's bullshit.
We're on the second episode of the Vertex Podcast, and today we have two really cool guests, Ryan Manning and Ryan Kingslien, two folks who know game art inside out, who have been through the trenches, been through it all, basically. And before we jump into the big conversation, I have a quick question for both of you. What is the most unexpected thing that has happened in your career in the recent few years?
Oh, I gotta think about that.
Yeah,
the
me
better
too.
Ryan,
That's
if
a
you
tough
could,
one.
if it's a better Ryan if you can think of one.
Turning 50 was a big one for me. That was a little eye-opening. Mortality. You're like, you got to be very healthy for this to be the halfway point. That was probably my big one.
I would say, as an entrepreneur, obviously, like running the studio, the biggest thing in the past like 5-7 years was we were working on our own game for a couple of years and had the stark reality hit us in the face of we can keep trying to do this for the next like 5 years and hope we make it, or we pivot. And that pivot was we kind of knew what we wanted to do or what we needed to do, but we also had no clue what we needed to do. And so that was probably the biggest change. I mean, but it worked out. I mean, it was a good thing. I mean, not only for like me personally, but for the studio, the folks working, like it was a necessary pivot.
That's very interesting, because that, when you mentioned that we didn't know how we were going to get through it or what we were doing, that to me as an aspiring artist, as a student too, that is like, how do I say, a reassurance in a way, because I feel like a lot of artists, including myself, there are times where we are like, I need to know this like right now. I need all my answers. I need everything figured out. And it's only human to not have everything figured out. It's okay. And I feel like what you said gives me, including a lot of other artists, reassurance that you'll get through it.
I say that's easy to say out loud, but like it's impossible to actually believe, because you're like, you need to figure out, like it's the proverbial, right, what are you going to do when you grow up with your life? And you're like, you need to have the answers, you need to figure it out. And it's like, well, if you don't, right, you have that pressure, whether it's from like family or society, you're like, well, why don't you have the answers? Go figure it out. Like, you've got to know what you want to do. It's just like, man, life rarely throws you I planned this out 10 years ago and I'm working my plan and things are going great.
Oh, life would be so perfect if it was that predictable.
That'd be boring. That'd be so boring to be like, yep, my plan's working. How about you? Plan's working. Great. I guess just another plan working its way out.
I find that's the time I screw something up. Just
when
to
you get
throw some chaos
complacent.
in. Yeah. It's like, it's going too well. We gotta screw something up.
I feel like Bob Ross does it the best, though. Bob Ross has that one quote that he keeps saying, happy accident. I feel like when things go awry, I feel like I like to call it a happy accident, because a lot of times I just learn.
It's so funny you say that, because it's been like a few years ago, but I have no idea who did this, but it was I think it was sponsored by the Bob Ross like foundation or whatever he has, like the company, but they decided to just stream his episodes on Twitch, which was great. Like there was literally no pretext, there was no warm up. It was just literally we're gonna put it on Twitch and people watch. But it was the best thing, because the audience's reaction to his like he just like all of a sudden just take like Van Dyke Brown for the tree, and he'd just smudge it, and then chat would explode with wrecked, and he goes, hold on, and then he make a tree out of it. But it's like that happy accident, like that was, sorry you said that, like that's it is like just happy accidents, and you change, you get new perspective and whatnot. But
Yes, it is a good way. I feel like he makes art more accessible, because there is something just so likable about him. I feel like from my perspective, it's that he is not promoting perfectionism. That's like, for me, that's probably my biggest negative trait. If I'm drawing, I'm like, this has to come out perfect or I'll be very upset with myself. And I feel that sometimes for so many people takes the joy out of art. And I feel like so many artists, like much like yourself, much like Ryan, I realize both of you are Ryan, so I'm gonna have to find a way to
R1, R2.
Yes, that's
I
one
want
way.
R2. I want R2.
Yeah, we just need to figure out who is R1 and who is R2. That's gonna make it easier.
That'll be the mystery. That'll be the big mystery.
Yeah.
But
I think Yash, along your lines, like one of the reasons, one of the things about students and people when they're learning is they're trying to gain control. That control has to be a springboard to jumping out and serving the industry, serving somebody, something where you don't have control. And that's hard. I mean, it's hard for me. It's I have the same thing when I draw. I have a way that I like to move that's relaxed and I enjoy, but I feel like I'm not good if I don't try to do it tight too and controlled. If I don't have control, I should say.
I've noticed folks like you I've noticed you tend to enjoy the process. Like it's not like you're smiling, but
It's a lie. It's a lie.
It's like I want to. I think though that underscores the sanctity of keeping hobbies and jobs, right? Because like a lot of times where you find your passions, where you find them blossom, where you find new ones, or you continue this stuff is through hobbies. And by definition, hobbies are not meant to be like a job, right? Like it's meant to just be an outward expression of you, or you just exploring, right? But like trying to intermix that with a job, I think is where a lot of folks feel that, that proverbial like, oh, I'm not satisfied in my job. It's like, well, yeah, like because your job is not meant to necessarily be this is where I'm going to explore, right? Like we have things we need to do. We have people counting on us. We have deadlines. We have pressures. We have constraints, right? So like that shouldn't necessarily feel like, oh, I'm doing awesome. Now, granted, right? Like as an artist, as you develop your skills, you hone your skills and you start getting, faster, better at things, or even just the ideation process of something's up here and I need to translate it out here, right? Like obviously, hopefully the more seasoned you get, you can do that. And then you start to, by nature, find more joy in that speed, that repetition. But again, ergo, I think that's why like I'm huge on this one, where I'm like, your hobbies, those should be like precious thing that you keep to like you enjoy, and you don't try to make that like, oh, I'm gonna make my hobbies my job and vice versa. Like, no, just have fun. Just like love what you love doing.
Did you just say ergo?
I did.
I love
Is that a big word?
I've always wanted to use that.
And my dictionary times. I'm terrible with words. We're artists. We don't work with words.
Damn it, Jim. I'm an artist.
Ergo.
So now moving to like the big topic, because in today's episode we'll be covering the elephant in the room, AI.
Dun, dun, dun.
AI, job security, adapting to new tech. So let's start with the elephant in the room, which is AI. And a lot of these AI tools are like evolving very, very fast. It's scary. The one satisfying thing for me is that I am extremely happy to see AI struggle drawing hands, because as an artist, when I draw anatomy, I struggle drawing hands. When I draw hands, it looks like a pitchfork. So when I see AI mess up hands, I'm like, yes, it's
I still have a chance. I still have a chance.
Yes.
Yeah.
Though, I kind of want to bring it to something even earlier, right? Because I mean, we talk about AI, but we all like ZBrush, for example, is one of a lot of our first loves getting into 3D. That destroyed thousands of jobs.
I say not to interrupt. I remember the day that I became aware of ZBrush. It was there was a buddy of mine in college. It was actually when ZBrush, like whatever first one came out, and he was like it was like beta program or something. He goes, oh, check this out. And I remember just this like very visceral feeling. I was like, that looks complicated. But then it was followed by this, I feel like you're cheating right now. Like what he was able to do. Because like we were so used to poly modeling, like literally every vertice, every poly by hand. I was like, man, like
or
kind of cheating. Yeah.
Patch modeling. Yeah.
Yeah.
But ZBrush came out. It destroyed a lot of jobs. Like I trained traditionally on the East Coast, and a lot of the guys that I went to school with, they would get jobs at doll collectible places, and they would be doing wax, and then wax is a process. Then you have to go from there, and those jobs disappeared. In fact, the story I always tell people is about Steve Lord, who he was on a 10-person team. They were told, let's say at the beginning of the year, like, hey guys, we need to learn ZBrush, we need to transition. I won't name the company he's working for. At the end of that year, he's the only one who did. He did the work of 10 people. That's it.
Okay.
So the rest were laid off. Yeah.
Here's a question for you then. Like that transitionary period usually is like associated with painful, right? Like, 'cause there's a lot of change, there's a lot of turmoil and stuff. Because I mean, you use ZBrush way more than I do. Do you feel like in hindsight, like that pain was justified, that there was like new growth, new blossom, or was it just like straight terrible?
Up until AI, I was like, it was justified. Now that we're in AI, I'm like, holy crap, we maybe opened the door to the dark side. Like maybe it seduced us and we got all this computer stuff involved, and then now AI is just going to take it all away. So now I don't know.
So do you think, this is a question to both of you, do you think it's legitimately a threat, or do you feel like it's a tool that can be used to produce quality art, and it's perhaps a bit more on the intelligent side to adapt to AI and learn to use it? Or should we just completely be like, you know what, we need to find ways to like stop AI? Because ethical use of AI is what I'm trying to go after, because I do not, and I don't think anyone endorses the stuff AI does unethically, which is
Or I say we
breaching
should throw it in there
copyright.
though because it's a thing, right?
Yeah, I
The
mean,
wide
yeah, it's
scraping of data.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's just
And it's done.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's breaching copyrights completely, and it is genuinely upsetting to
Yeah,
see.
I would say so. So let me pull up my soapbox. I was trying to like not interrupt Ryan on this one because this one is something that
Thanks.
like is like I'm passionate about it too, right? Like and I have an interesting perspective that I have to look through, right? Because like not only as like an artist myself, I'm concerned, and thinking about how can I exploit this for good, and then how can I avoid the things that may be damaging, right? But I also have another lens that I look through, which is Bad Rhino right now. We've got 35 people that are employed, and many of them are artists in some capacity, even some of the engineers that use AI tools, right? That are affected by like me deciding, hey, do we implement AI tools? Do we leverage these, right? Because, it's the concern about, well, is it going to replace jobs? Which is totally valid, but I got my thoughts. So my soapbox of AI. So here's kind of what I think about AI on like a 50,000 foot view. I think that it's kind of there's parallels to when, and this is going to sound probably pretty hokey, but when caveman got the first paintbrush, right? Like up until that point, everything was being done by hand. You were literally painting everything, and then get the paintbrush, like, oh, it's ruining, because like now you can make this so much faster, et cetera, which is like, okay, valid. I believe, and I'll die on this hill. My opinion about AI's integration is this. If you look at everything AI, right? We are human. We are predisposed as humans, so completely agnostic to technology. We know when something is human. We know when something is synthetic, even if it's like very, very subtle. And I think that to me has been the underscore of the whole AI debate is it human? Was it generated by a human, or is it replacing human? And I think that, at least from what I've seen, and for me, the scary like, oh shit moment is going to be when you can't tell that AI did it. But right, there's always like a little something there that doesn't feel right. The big thing that I'm holding on to as kind of like my big truth with AI aspect is, right, we are humans. We are driven by story, the story of humanity, the story of ourselves, the story of, seeing ourselves expressed through other things. That's something AI can't get. Like they still just can't get it. If you ask it to like, hey, go make me a movie, right? Like you'll get beat points where like, oh, that was sad, that was exciting. But that whole narrative, AI can't do. Like it's an impossible thing. So that being my litmus, which again is a huge broad range, diving into what I personally think about it. In fact, I've talked to my folks at my studio quite a bit, especially as AI tools, are evolving. And I have told them this. I've told them, I said, I'm not going to replace you with a tool because you are a crafter, and AI cannot craft a story. It can craft via prompts, but what I've told them, I said, why shouldn't we use AI tools to do a lot of the repetitive heavy lifting? In fact, as an example, one of the things we're exploring right now, blockout meshes, like purely through AI, just go like, hey, we need to come up with the vehicle concept. Well, okay, so I have one of my lead artists. I'm like, you're the prompter. Like, which, side note, I think that's going to be some of the new jobs we see coming out is like an AI prompter, right? Like something where it's like, and I've told them this, it's like, hey, I need you to like, what we're trying to make here. So give it the prompts, go through, like guide it to where you think it hits the vision we have. But I'm like, but it doesn't make sense for us to spend 2, 3 weeks, 4 weeks making blockout meshes when we're really just trying to find, hey, do we have something that works well? So, process 10 blockout meshes using AI tools in 2 hours, and then let the art team, which again is the people, like let them build the character into it. Let them do the surfacing. Let them, do the fine details. So we save 2, 3 weeks here with AI tools. Let's just dump that into just making better, awesome, cooler looking art. That's my soapbox. I'll step off it now.
So more of just getting some amount of maybe like a white box out of AI and then polishing it because it saves time, makes things efficient.
I think like another thing, because I thought about this too, right? Like, so I was Maya 3.5 when I first started learning Maya, back when it was Alias. And I remember the moment when the auto UV tool came out. And I'm like, oh, there's some parallels to like AI with that, right? Because like before that, I literally had to unwrap and lay out UVs by hand, which is cathartic at times, but again, probably a huge waste of time if you got a bunch of things, right? But that was an example of a tool that was doing a process for you that was largely done by hand that actually was beneficial because now I don't have to lay out UVs necessarily, and it saves me a ton of time.
I love that because the focus is, you brought up in the very beginning, you brought up tools, right? So like caveman's painting literally by hand, and everybody since that original caveman, all a bunch of cheaters, just phoning it in. Why didn't they? Oh, come on, you could have just used your thumb with a little bit of what do you got to use this brush stuff for, right? But then, you go back and you think, Leonardo da Vinci, oil painting was a better technology than egg tempera. It covered vaster areas. It allowed more atmospheric work with the layering. And then, so like in my world, with stone carving in the 19th, was it 19th or 18th? I always forget which way it is, but when the pneumatic hammer came out, that was considered cheating.
Yeah.
But I mean, do you want to go back to the Greeks? They didn't even have cast iron. They had bronze chisels, and bronze is a soft metal. So are you cheating because now you're using like steel, carbide, tungsten chisels?
Romans are like, you're taking our jobs, man.
You're taking
these are the bronze tools polishers. They're gonna be out of work now.
And what took them, because they had to sharpen their bronze, right? So they had to, I mean, it took them at least 3 times longer because they had to stop and sharpen, stop and sharpen. And here I am, pneumatic hammer, So is it not art? But I love that where you said it's, it just comes back to we're crafters, we're telling stories. These are tools. How do we deal with like, where's it too far almost? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's such a good question though, because I think, and this comes from, I don't know if R2, you have the same feel on this one, right? But like being a leader of a studio, right? Like having people look to you and count on you to make decisions. Like I look through the lens now of like, I think with AI, especially the integration of it, it's really up to leaders to, I don't want to say determine, but to lead what is right and what is not right. And I think a lot of what's happening right now in AI, why, again, like the artist community, the creators community is so adamantly against it, is because the primary push for AI is people replacement. It's not supplemental to it. And I think that is what is like angering us so much about AI and this push to adopt it in everything.
I still feel humans are designed for survival. So I feel like as difficult as this phase is, I feel we can still survive it because I have a colleague, like not a colleague, a friend who recently was laid off.
She just puts you in the friend zone there. Just saying. Colleague. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
No. I've not worked with this person, which is why colleague would probably not be the most exact
Thanks
word.
for clarifying.
But yes,
their feelings are still hurt, but it's fine.
It's okay. I'm sure they'll get over it. But this person recently was laid off from their job. It was quite tough because this person did share with me that their management straight up told them, we are just going to replace you for the AI and we'll be fine. And I've noticed that person, while they were sort of upset and they were like, oh, Yash, this is like, I'm so upset this has happened. And obviously, while I empathize with them, this may be like tough love, but I was like, I think you will survive because it's not like you're not capable of anything else. It's not like you're not intelligent. You will cope because that's what we are designed to do. When you're in a pinch, your brain's not going to sit back and be like, okay, this is all right. Like just going, this is okay. It's not like you will find a way to survive. And this person, they found themselves another job. They are in a better position. I'm telling you, you're built for survival.
Do you want to work at a place that will replace you?
That is not really up to people though, is it? Because you don't get to choose. Like you end up at a company, but you can't really tell a lot on what a company is going to treat you like. There are obviously some red flags. Like if a company tells you we are like family, I'm like, no, let's not mix family and professional colleagues in the same,
Amen.
Let's not do that.
Sorry, there is no family unless you're literally working for your family.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm working for my family. So let's not be like, you're like my family, but I'll pay you. Like, thanks, but no thanks. Like, just let's keep those two things separate. And also just going back a little bit when we were still talking about tools, I did want to tie like two or three things together and have a question for the two of you again, which is first is when we were talking about tools and how everybody after a caveman is a cheater in one way or the other. I feel like one thing I personally experienced is when I first started, I started by drawing paper, pencil, charcoal, bit of acrylic paints. And then I moved to learning Photoshop. And when I first started learning Photoshop, I did have a few people who, well, half jokingly were like, oh, you're cheating. Like in Photoshop, you can do Control Z and you can fix everything. In painting, you have one shot to get it right. And I went in with that mindset thinking that, oh, Photoshop's going to be easy. And then all hell broke loose because I started struggling and I was like, my God, digital art is nowhere as easy as people think it is, because just because it's computer and you can do a Control Z does not mean it's easy. And I felt like that is a misconception I noticed a lot of people having. Second thing is that we are talking about people sculpting, like even let's just take ZBrush for an example. You need to have, let's say you're sculpting a human, you need to understand human anatomy to be able to sculpt well, to be able to know what muscle goes where and what size, what shape would it possibly be. Now, with that knowledge, you're able to execute. So even if I was to take away ZBrush from everybody and give them another sculpting software, they would still be able to adapt. Now, when it comes to AI, I have noticed a lot of people who do not necessarily have the artistic knowledge, but they prompt, they try, and they create something. Sometimes it's a hit or miss situation. They get it right, sometimes they don't. And these people, some of them are self-proclaimed prompt
I'm an expert.
artists.
Did you see that amazing thing I did? Yeah.
It's like self-proclaimed prompt artist. So now my question to both of you is, do you think it is still very necessary to have the knowledge when you are using AI to generate stuff?
Well, here, we'll get question one or two. Did you want to go first, or you want me to?
No, you can go first one.
Okay. So I think on that one, right, like, and I'll say this very like gently. Any idiot can do a prompt, right? Just put in a bunch of words and you'll get a thing out. It's the mastery, it's the control of that, right? It's the same thing. Like, right, I could go get a pneumatic chisel and chisel away at rock. Does that put me in the same league as Ryan, right? Like, no. The difference there is, is it the tool? No. It's a pneumatic chisel. It does its thing. It's the artist behind it that is determining the final output, right? So like Ryan can get far further along in stone carving than I can. I can barely even start, right? But like, I think it's the same parallel. Like, I know it's the same parallel with the AI aspect, right? Like, again, being gentle here, like any idiot can do a prompt, but can you create something that fits within a world and an ecosystem that we're building? Example, real quick on this one, right? Like in video games, there's a ton of art. There's a ton of visuals. There's a story unfolding, right? You not only have the visual aspects, but you have the interaction with those aspects, right? So the quote self-proclaimed artist who does amazing, right? They could generate the most amazing looking box in the world through a prompt. But the question is, does that box fit within this world, this narrative that we're creating? And I think, again, that's where it's like, can somebody use tools? Yeah, go ahead. But like, I need you to make a box that fits with our, I don't know, techno neon cyberpunk world. Make me a box like that. And then that's when the artistry comes out, and the tool is just that. It's a tool.
Yeah, that's great, because there's so much. When I teach texturing, I always send people over to Simon Fuchs' ArtStation so that they can see it in Overwatch, the gradients on a wall, right? And you have to look at those gradients, and you look at the saturation, you look at the hue, the color choices, and that defines the look. And then there's the big shapes, small shapes, and the ratio of all of that stuff. That's all part of understanding that style and being able to craft something that fits in that world. I also think about there's two parts to this. Do you remember there was some controversy on Amazon's grocery stores? Like, supposedly it was all
You're talking like
artificial.
the automated ones?
Yeah.
When you can walk in and there's nobody there?
Yeah. So supposedly that was all AI, right? And then they did a expose on it, and it turned out to be a call center in India that was just looking, and everybody was pouring over these videos to see what was going on. So then they decided that AI stood for an Indian, right?
Yeah.
And
I remember that too, actually, because like they had all
Okay.
the cameras in there. Like the camera's like, oh, we're scanning, checking stuff. No, it was being monitored by people and literally just checking like, oh, UK checked out with like the 5 items you have.
Yeah, and then so I think about that, and then I think about on the creative side, you look at James Cameron. Like, James Cameron basically has an AI studio. Like, he walks into the studio and he says, I want X, Y, and Z, basically gives that studio a prompt, and at the end of that day, they give him artwork, So it's like, to me, it depends on what level at which you're operating. So all of this just comes down to, where are you operating in your skill and your brand and your capacity? Are you just trying to lay out UVs for a living? Well, God help us, hopefully that job does go away.
Yeah.
But are you telling a story?
Something
different. Yeah.
Something interesting on that one too. There is a go with me here to fan the flames NFT collection. Yeah. Barf. But like it's a good example here. But there's an NFT collection that is based around, like, it's like a card game, and they do like these cards. And I remember reading this article, which I thought was really interesting that they had publicly acknowledged, which is, easier for the Web3 folks to be like, oh yeah, we use AI. It's cool. It's awesome. But they had highlighted that their cards are absolutely stunningly beautiful. Like from like a visual standpoint, they're amazing. And they came out with an article that basically said, yeah, that there's one guy who does all of our cards and he uses AI. But then like they dug into it and it's like, well, and they said, okay, because one of the questions is like, so why are you paying somebody to use an AI tool? And they go, because he knows how to get the results he wants, that we want, that fits with the style. And they found out when they dug into it, like I think like 75% of the time it gets there, but he still has the artistry tools, the artistry mindset where he can push them just a little bit further. And I thought like that's actually a really good use case of, because again, like they're generating thousands of cards, right? But the artist is still in control. And I think that's where, again, like if it was just the AI tools, you'd know it, you'd recognize it. You see the blobby weird stuff, the, 6-fingered hands, etc. But there's still an artist being controlled by it. And granted, not saying I'm like all in favor of the NFT world, but I give kudos to that company for paying the artist and paying him very well, even though he's still using, AI tools to get, 70-80% of the way there.
With that being said, like still basically saying that you still need the artistic knowledge, you need to have a strong foundation in order to get a good result from AI.
That's as simple as asking the question, like, if I grab something off a shelf, does this look good? Well, how do you quantify that? Well, you got to know what's bad and you got to know what's good, right? And that's the artistry. Yeah. Like, how do I know that this hand looks well? How do I know that, this person who's supposed to be a heroic stature has a heroic stature? Like, you still have to have that foundational knowledge.
So what would you, both of you, tell to like aspiring artists who are wanting to break into the industry? AI is here and I don't think it's going anytime soon, going away anytime soon. And I don't think it's going to be, we are not going to get any laws and regulations anytime soon. They will show up at some point, but I don't think it's right now. But to all the artists who are like, who want to pursue art, but are apprehensive that why should I even do it? Because what if like I do this all for nothing and AI takes away the one thing that I love the most?
Let me say on that one, and this is me speaking as like, God, I'm sounding arrogant here, as a CEO in the games industry, as a influencer, as a trying to be a part of vocal things, and speaking specifically to like artists and stuff who are thinking about getting in the industry. As long as I still have breath, I will continue to fight for the artist. I will continue to fight and show that like you still need that person. AI is not going to replace that. I know there's other people on the other side that are like, no, AI can do all that. So I'm hoping that comes across as hope for artists, that like just because you have folks with a loud bullhorn telling you that AI is the solution to replace it, it doesn't mean that that's the truth of what the future is going to be. So sorry, off of it.
That's great. And then also on top of that, there's the copyright issue. I mean, the trademark industry, the organization, they've come out and said if it's AI, it's not copyrightable. So you don't actually. I mean, who's going to do that?
On that note too, I actually give some kudos. I'm not going to name them on this podcast, but I'm working with some pretty big companies. Sorry, my dog. 2 seconds. Let me get it. Yes, I have a dog too. Thanks everybody. No, what I was going to say is like our studio is working with some pretty big studios, and they've actually started to build into their contracts a no AI clause, which is super reassuring for artists. Like now, granted, there are some that there's like a caveat saying it just has to be pre-approved. So for example, grammar check on ChatGTP, probably okay. So, but they are pushing to protect the artist. So sorry.
I think Epic has had some rules against that for a long time too. There's a lot of people that have stood up for it, if for no other reason, like it's a supply chain problem. Like, if you have somebody that's starting to use that tool and then it goes down and it actually becomes a big asset, now you don't have copyright on that asset. Like is a supply chain problem waiting to happen.
I was going to say, so the concept of what is value, that's a deep one. But I feel like for listeners, do we want to go back to the question real quick about like the advice for artists and AI stuff? Because I feel like that'd be like a burning question. Like I know I'm backtracking here. I'll give my 2 thoughts so that we can like go back to the value thing. My advice to any artist, again, like having a foundational knowledge is independent of AI tools. Having a knowledge about the way the world works, the way the world is perceived, the way that we can modify the world to fit an artistic vision, that is something that you don't do with AI tools. That's being an artist. However, going into the current job market, the best advice and recommendation I would have is, again, understanding that the push I have for any artist, is, if they were to work for us, is you are going to be the captain of that tool, regardless of what it is. If it's AI, if it's ZBrush, if it's Photoshop. Like, I want to know that you can craft a story, and I want you to know how to exploit that software. Example, right? With ZBrush, you can do 3D sculpting. You're probably not going to do, like website mockups in ZBrush, and vice versa with Photoshop, right? Like, you know how to use the tool to get the result that you want. What I'm looking for is I'm hiring you to understand the result and to go make it happen.
Yeah, I love that. And to piggyback and answer that, I think this is one of the important things for me in all education. Like you have to give somebody like a North Star or a direction to kind of go in. And so, the key thing to be asking yourself is at what level are you operating? Are you operating as like just a technician? And if that's the only thing you do and you get into your 50s and you're just a technician, like you're either going to have to relearn what you're doing or you're going to be replaced. That happens whether you work in HVAC or games. Doesn't matter, but you ultimately want to start to be telling story as R1 is saying, it's you have to be. I find employers like if you come in and you can connect on that and you understand story, you have the skill, you have the capacity, and you understand the world, like it just creates a level of comfort that's going to increase your chances of getting that job, because I think it's too hard for somebody to say like I'm going to do this to get a job. That there's 1,000 people for one job application. You can't. That's a hopeless route. But you can sit down and you can look like what's going to improve the level at which I'm a job candidate, let's say, and being able to tell story and connect on story and demonstrate that in your work, like our environment artists at Vertex, like when they tell story with the environment. And if you do a prop and you're like, and this is term one, you have a lantern. Well, where's the lantern been? What's the story behind it? That's all texturing. That's all important.
I've got a good example of this because this one is like, as an artist, I love this one too. The scratch filter, right? Like, so not going too deep on this one, but like, Perfect, I think where you see a lot of this is like in weapons, and without going down too much of a pathway, I know weapons through and through, like build them, know how they work, etc. And something that I've seen from like a great artist and a novice artist is, well, how do I make this gun that I've made, right, look weathered? And the novice artist will just apply the scratch filter and maybe paint out a couple different things. But a pro, you'll look and you go like, oh yeah, that looks real. And it's like, why? Like to R2's point, because they're thinking through like, where's this been? Has it been in the dirt? Has it been through the mud? Does it go into a holster? Does it go into a backpack? Does it get thrown around in a vehicle? And so you start to put those scratches in the places that mimic the story you've come up for this thing. And that's what feels so good about like, okay, why that one just looks amazing and that one just looks like, oh yeah, you use the procedural scratch filter,
Yeah, perfect.
It's very interesting that you say that, because when I was doing when I was learning environment art at Vertex, I think one of the very first few projects that we had was working on a barrel, just a massive barrel, which is like you can make it look however you want. And I was trying to make it look weathered. And I did exactly what you said. I was like, oh, it's weathered. Let me just slap on some scratches, slap on some grunge, maybe paint a little. And my mentor actually at the time, she said the exact same thing. She was like, it's looking weathered, all right, but it's not looking what it's weathered from. And I was confused. I was like, what do you mean? And she's like, where has this thing been? Has it been in a truck? Has it fallen off the truck and rolled onto the road? What happened to it? Where is it? And she was like, think about it. It's looking like a small barrel, but you need to find a story. What happened? So that is very interesting. And just going a little back to what you were talking about, like giving some advice to aspiring artists. What is this, again, question to both of you? What is the one skill, or rather, what are the few skills you think would be absolutely non-negotiable for artists in the next, let's say, 5 to 10 years?
Like holistically, like just industry,
if you're an artist, you want to break into the industry, skills that are non-negotiable.
I think foundationally, and I may just throw a couple of these out. I think foundationally you have to understand the capabilities of AI and at least how to make a prompt. Again, not supplemental to having the actual skills, but I mean, again, AI and the tools around that are going to be a part of the industry, whether or not we fight it and want it to happen or not. I've got another one. I think too, again, with the adoption of, again, because I don't want to sound like I'm just hounding AI, but we know it's a driving force right now. You're going to see a lot of imposter artists come out from it, right? The folks that like, hey, made this really cool thing. I did this awesome thing by doing a prompt. And you're like, yeah, it actually looks amazing. Which again, to me is further reinforcement that, artists that are aspiring and trying to go out there, just further entrenching in, but do you know what you want to get? And can you get those results? Exactly. Regardless of whatever tool you use, can you get there? Can you do that? I think that's going to be even more important because again, when you've got, 50,000 new artists, that know how to do AI prompts, like you're going to stand out by like, no, you've actually created a story. You've crafted something. You've done cohesion. Like I'm not seeing that from, the AI barrel maker.
Yeah, I would definitely say exposure to AI is going to be really key. And that's just something as simple as going into ChatGPT and, making sure you're asking it for stuff, plan a vacation with it, have it explain how to do something in Unreal Engine, so you can see where it's wrong and where it's right. And then, of course, with the generative stuff, both with Dolly, Midjourney, being able to understand what the limitations are right now. Like I think you just have to get out there and you have to play with these tools. And if you're not playing with these tools, like you're not doing yourself any favors by being, purist, whatever that is. You have to have exposure to these. But yeah.
I was going to say, I think there's going to be an interesting thing, at least in my personal journey too, with doing AI tools, and probably speaking this as well. I mean, like, what am I now, like 20 years artist? Something I've realized. So this is like trying to speak like an elder down the road, right? Like something I've realized, like by learning those tools, it isn't necessarily changing how I approach or how I craft my art. It just makes me think a little differently. Case in point would be, well, if I need to like remove a tire from my car, I could use a hammer and do a lot of damage, or I just understood how to use a wrench now. Like, oh, actually, this is a little bit better tool, but I still know what I want to make. I know what I want to achieve. So for me, it's like using some of these AI tools doesn't scare me right now because like I'm still the master and the commander of the vision of what I want. I'm just determining, well, what is the tool that's going to help me get there faster? That's all it is.
Yeah. And I know we've talked to a couple of people on the text to 3D model side. And most people say, it's 5+ years out. There's a lot of people generating synthetic data. So they're actually generating the assets, going through Houdini, creating all the procedural variations. And I mean, there's actively people on that problem. But it's going to be some time before they get enough data, really, And then, the other things that I think are important if we're talking like the job skills is, Unreal Engine is like, that's for me, number one is you've got to get in no matter where you are. If you're getting into games, if you're going to be a designer, I was just out at an event the other day. If you're going to be a game designer, you design in Unreal, get into Unreal, create something, block stuff out. If you're going to be an environment artist, figure out blueprints, move your way to coding, have ChatGPT teach you coding. If you have C++ experience and knowledge and exposure, I mean, you start leveling up on the ladder.
I feel like a few things could summarize with the talk related to AI is one, you definitely need to have your foundations in as an artist. Cannot do without the foundations, because if you do have the foundations, you get more accurate results, or at least the results you want. That'll help you.
I think you can get there faster. I think that's the key. Is like it's not necessarily getting the exact result you want, but again, an example like a blockout mesh, right? Like why spend 2 weeks trying to create a blockout mesh when you can do like in 20 minutes?
Yeah. And AI is not going to make you an artist any more than having a paintbrush and 5 tubes of paint is going to make you a painter or an artist. It's not going to happen. You have to know something of where you're going, and you have to build that capacity.
I feel like what the points that both of you have mentioned does cover one thing that I recently had a conversation with this one person who understands that AI is here for good, like it's not gonna leave, but they have this idea that if they incorporate AI into their work, it takes away from the artist that they are. Whereas I have a different opinion. I'm like, if it's gonna speed up my work, I'm gonna do it, because I am still making art. I'm still in the process. I'm still doing what I love, but it's not taking away from the artist that I am.
Yeah, it sounds very much like the paintbrush boycott of 3 million BC when, there was a group of cavemen that refused to pick up the paintbrush.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. And
I love it. And as R1 was saying earlier, it's like, I guess, you pick the hill you're going to die on. That's fine.
Yeah.
Like if that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do. I'm sure it'll lead somewhere.
Yeah.
But if you need to provide for your family, if you actually have to make money and you're not independently wealthy, then, I mean, you're not doing yourself favors by ignoring it.
But again, that's also the reason too, like why hobbies exist, right? Like if there's something that you are super passionate about, which happens to be almost entirely analog and definitely would not make you money, who cares? Like you're not doing it to make money. You're doing it as an expression of you. Like that's fine. Like go do that as a hobby. Like granted, again, Ryan's point, like if you got a family and stuff, like don't die on that hill. Like I will always be this. Like, yeah, nobody's paying for that. So like maybe you need to pivot and go find something else, but then do that in your spare time. Do that for fun.
Speaking of being passionate, I feel like there are too many times where I hear a lot of people people say, I've just started with my career, right? Because I'm in my 20s. I've a long way to go. I have heard a lot of times this thing of like passion to, turn your passion into your profession or your passion to career.
Barf.
Yeah,
I
right.
will say,
Totally.
I feel like there's two sides to that coin, because for me, there are multiple things I'm passionate about. Like for me, for example, I'm very passionate about like music. I love producing music. I produce music in my free time. But there I did have a thought, like I tried exploring, do I want this for a career? And the more I dug into it, the more I was like, this is taking away the joy I have in producing music. This is taking away from my love for music. It's sort of like, the more I try to turn it into a profession, this is going to be probably a weird analogy, but I kind of felt like I was third wheeling in a relationship.
Yeah.
It just felt like that. And I was like, maybe this is not it. This is not it.
Well, I mean, to pull my soapbox back over, that literally underpins what I was saying about like hobbies and jobs. I mean, like, again, a hobby by nature should not be anything that is inherently focused on making any money. It's just purely meant to just be, again, an outward expression of you, manifested in some way. And if you look at fundamentally what a job is, and I feel like it's going to be like in ages, because I'm like, I guess Ryan and I are part of the seniors club now, but like looking back, like it's like, if you really think about what is the inherent nature of a job, it's not meant to be a like fulfilling thing for you as a person. A job is just purely meant to be a way that you make an income to afford the things you need to live and survive. Like, I mean, which again sounds like terribly bleak, but it's like, I mean, if you understand that as like the foundation of a job, like hopefully that makes it understand why trying to force your passions as a job and to make a job something you're passionate about, like why so many people, which kind of sounds like just like why you're probably feeling that too, is like, I feel at odds. I feel like I'm being stretched. Like this doesn't feel natural. It's like, yeah, because it's not. Like, again, if you can find joy and happiness in the job that you do, awesome, right? But like a job foundationally is just to be like, hey, I've got bills to pay. I've got family to feed. I got myself to feed. Like that's the purpose of my job, and then keeping that segregated of, well, okay, well, where do I find that passion? Well, you find it in relationships. You find it in hobbies. You find it in things that are not inherently driven to make an income. They're meant to just provide joy and satisfaction. Like keeping those two separate is a good thing.
But I mean, passion will get you into a relationship. It'll get you out of a relationship. And you can't have that if you're getting into a career. You're making a partnership with an industry that's long term, that you're going to depend on and that you have to be strategic about. So you got to pick something that you feel like you can grow in.
Mm-hmm.
But it can't be passion alone. Like it has to have some depth to it. I guess
I feel like I should say too, right? Like you're right, because like to make it not sound like you can't have any passion, right? Like if I had the choice, like if somebody told me like you can go haul 50-pound bags of concrete all day long, or you can go make art, I'd be like, oh, I will absolutely go make art, right? I think though, again, it's the perspective. Like I wouldn't be in the career that I'm in. I don't think Ryan would, R2 would be in it either if there wasn't some degree of passion. I think the thing though to keep in mind, and this is the healthy perspective, at some point a job becomes just that, right? Like I've worked on projects where, starting out just super awesome. This is an amazing project. And then towards, mid stages, latter stages, it was just like, we've got to churn out content. Like we've got to push things. We've got to get this done because we got a ship date, right? So like that window, you would probably say like my passion was not as high as it was when it started. But again, like having the right perspective, it's like, okay, well, this is the job, right? Like we're making the product, we're making the thing. Like that's okay. That's part of this. Like, but it doesn't mean that like, oh, my passions have waned. It's time for me to change careers and, have the hype. It's just like it became a job at that point, right? But if it continues downhill and, you lose all passion for your work and stuff, well, yeah, that's career change at that point. But again, to have that moment where a job becomes a job, like not letting that just drive like, okay, this is how life is, this is how it is, et cetera. It's like, no, it's a job and, maybe it'll get better, maybe it'll change. And that's fine.
It's about maintaining that balance. And I guess like it's a sweet spot. Like you can have passion when you're pursuing a job, but I've noticed that when it's just a hobby, when it's just a passion, your passion is good enough to keep you going. You're doing it because of the joy it brings you. But when it comes to a job, the reason passion is not enough is because there'll be a lot of times you'll be working on a project that you may not necessarily be too crazy about. And that's where I would say discipline comes in, because your job is sort of like a mix of passion and discipline, because obviously you have to like it to a certain extent to be able to do the job, but then you also need to have discipline that even if you are not very high on the passion, or like you're not very high on the motivation, you still had that discipline, that mindset that, okay, this is a job, I'm getting paid for this, we have a ship date, I'm going to get it done, and we're going to move on to the next. Like if you don't have that, that's where it gets difficult. And oftentimes I feel people can mix up that, like, because you hear so often like, oh, do what you love what you do, like.
Well, actually, on that point too, I think it's why a lot of, again, for fear of sounding like I'm doing ageism here, but I think it's why a lot of like the younger generation right now is feeling berated by industries and job, is because, again, they're not understanding that discipline, right? Like, as a case in point, like, all jobs are going to experience lulls. I mean, you're going to have that. It's just by nature, whether or not that's self-imposed or, taking that in and harboring that as like it's a reflection of you, and they just get depressed. It's like, no, this has nothing to do with you or your abilities. This is just the situation we're in. This is just the chapter right now of the nature of the project. And I think, if anything, my advice on that end too would be, again, that sounds like, just toughen up. But like, I think it's having that perspective that, right, like your job doesn't have to be a reflection of you, Now, granted, you can be reflected in the work that you do, but don't take it as, like, again, the ups and downs of things, right? Just like, keep it in stride, keep pushing forward with it. And to your point about discipline, right? Use a workout example here, right? Like, say you're trying to bench press and you can only bench 25 pounds, right? And you keep pushing. Eventually, you're going to hit a point where you're like, I've got to push through, or I can just cry that I can't push 30 pounds, right? You push through, and then eventually you hit 30 pounds, and then you go on, you do it again. Like, that's just part of the discipline, and you can understand it. It's not a reflection of you.
I love that. Yeah. You're more than the job, at the end of the day, which I think within the context of this AI conversation is really important, because, again, if you see yourself just as a technician, you are replaceable. But and maybe that's your way in. Maybe your way into a company is that you are the best technician that they could find for this job. But you, in my opinion, you need to start finding other ways to make yourself valuable and contribute.
I feel when you build skills, especially, this is just my personal opinion, but I feel like when you build fantastic communication skills and alongside other multiple skills, you become that much more valuable. What would not make you that easily replaceable is, like Arvind said, you bring more value. And
well, I think it's, and I think with the value, because that's right, because like what does it mean to be valuable, right? Well, for a company, they're trying to achieve something, right? I'll use video games because like we're trying to make a video game, we're trying to ship a video game, and this will come off as cold, but just, hear me out on this one, right? Like, I hire people to help us achieve that vision, that goal, right? To release a video game into the wild for players to play. Go with me here. Hear me for a second. Releasing that video game has nothing to do with necessarily who you are as a person, right? You can be 6 foot tall, you can be 2 foot tall, right? That doesn't have bearing on if that game is going to be successful or not. It's what you do in that job, right? Like the art that you make, the code that you create, the, working together with other teams to make a really good thing. Granted, that's the personal side of it. And so I think if you understand that from that lens, and again, that's every job. To use the HVAC one, right? Like I could care less if you're colorblind, right? That doesn't matter. What matters is, can you install, my plumb and my ductwork and do it right to where it's, proper sized and code. So with that understanding that, again, like, yes, you as a person are very important in that mix, but really what you're doing for that company is producing something, and that's what you need to be good at, so hone those skills, do those things that you can help that company make those things bigger, better, faster, and you will have carved yourself a niche in that company. Now, granted, a good company that sees that value, that's the key, recognizes it, will want to keep you.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. And also, okay, this is one thing that I've noticed that's happening a lot in the job market recently. Again, a question to both of you. I've seen a lot of entry-level jobs. In the job description, it says entry level must have shipped 1 AAA title. And and a lot of people are like, it's a endless cycle, because if I want experience and if I want to ship an AAA title, someone needs to give me the experience. But if I want someone to give me the experience, I need to have the experience. So it's just like,
so let me just tell you, I'll spoil the secret. It's bullshit. And I mean that in all honesty, because like, I mean, really what it is. So I can say this, having been on the hiring side, right? Like, we need people, we're looking for folks. I'll sheepishly say this. I think the last time I checked our inbox for applications, it was at 15,000, right?
Oh my God.
So yeah,
Wow.
which is terrible. That feels terrible. But again, another topic. But like the reason why those companies put that on there is because they want to discourage just anybody from applying. They want to, do it. I will tell you this, and this is a secret. I know this from AAA. I know this from myself working with other studios. If your portfolio stands out and you tick the boxes, they could care less if you ship the AAA title, period. Yeah. Really what they want to do is just see, do you have the skills and is it a right fit for what we need? Like that's just the truth of it. Which goes on to a point, like not to diatribe too much on this one, but goes to a point, I think this is why it's so important for artists to be able to showcase themselves. So not only the soft skills, right? How you are with people, with communication, with discipline, etc., but also your hard skills. Like, can you do the thing? Can you do beautiful anatomy? Can you do dioramas? Can you build worlds? Can you build art? That's why it's so important for artists to be able to do that. So when you hit that wall of, I don't have a AAA title, we'll ignore it. Like present the rest of you. And that may actually be enticing enough for the studios.
I feel like that's a very good note to end on, because I feel like that answers a lot of questions a lot of aspiring artists would have, a lot of worries that people have. We're also interested in this video, especially with AI, with companies saying I want one AAA title shipped, and a lot of other variety of things. And I feel like this has been very interesting and very meaningful and very valuable for an episode. And it's been an absolute pleasure talking to both of you. And thanks for joining us today.
Yeah. It's the Ryan and Ryan show.
That jingle means we have to do it.
Yeah.
I love it. Yash, great. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ryan.
Yeah, no problem. My pleasure.
R1.
R2.
Thank you, R1 and R2. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
Thank you. See you guys.
All right.